Hello, this is Darrell Castle with today's Castle Report. This is Friday, the 16th day of January in the year of our Lord 2026. I will be talking about Iran today, exploring the possibilities for changing the regime there from one run by Islamic fundamentalists to one run by the ex-Shah's son, Reza Pahlavi. What does the U.S. want in Iran? What is the U.S. willing to do to get it? Yes, it seems that revolution is in the air once again in Iran, but this time seems to be a little different. Every few years, people grow weary of the Ayatollah's strict laws, its moral police, etc. They take to the streets in protest. This time it seems to be different for several reasons. Protests this time are much more massive, much more widespread, and the people are showing great courage because the last report I saw showed more than 2,500 dead, more than 10,000 arrested, so not just protests, but war in the streets, it seems. The Iranians don't waste much time on niceties such as fair trial because they arrest a protester one day, publicly hang him the next as a warning to others. Another reason why this time might be different is that the U.S. president is clearly supporting the protesters with his words and with promises of military action. The primary reason, however, is that this time there are real reasons other than resistance to fundamentalist Islam. The last large-scale protest there happened when a young woman was arrested by the moral police. That's what they call it, folks, the moral police. She ended up raped and murdered in their custody. So some morality by our standards. The regime is apparently then made up of very bad people. That's always involved in the unrest. This time, in addition, however, there is a critical, life-threatening nationwide water shortage caused or at least made worse by the regime's misuse of water facilities, reservoirs, etc. The water shortage is so bad that the capital city of Tehran is threatened with water rationing for a city of 9 million people. That would be catastrophic. The final straw in this round of unrest has been the skyrocketing inflation, the destruction of the purchasing power of the Iranian rial. The rial has been devalued so much that Iranian reports now express inflation in terms of dollars. It's lost 60% of its value just since last June. So the regime is bad. The people are courageous. Hundreds killed, thousands arrested, and for many of them it's the same thing. The U.S., through its chief executive, threatens to, quote, hit them very hard, end quote. The U.S. currently has about 2,000 troops right next door in Iraq. All U.S. bases in the region are on high alert. The U.S. Central Command, certain regional partners, I wonder who those could be, have opened a new Middle East Air and Missile Defense Command Center at the U.S. base in Qatar. Reports yesterday said U.S. troops are now being evacuated in expectation of an Iranian military attack. If you have any doubt about whether the U.S. considers itself to be responsible for policing the whole world and making it right in the U.S. president's eyes, those doubts should now be erased. When one country has regime change fostered on it quite often, it makes a lot of other countries mad. This situation is no different. The U.S. announced a 25% tariff on countries that do business with Iran, and that has made the Chinese very angry. Iran is a key part of China's multi-trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative. They desperately want the mullahs to stay in power, so the U.S. is, in its own eyes, the policeman of the world. The Iranians seem genuinely disturbed this time, unlike all the other times. Their repressive tactics don't seem to be working as well this time. I guess all the Mossad and CIA agents on the ground in Iran encourage the people to carry on. It seems that way anyway. Reports coming out of Iran are that many in the regime want to talk diplomatically with the U.S. this time to avoid a U.S. attack. Talks were scheduled, but when Trump heard that people were being killed and hanged, he canceled the talk. My opinion is that the regime wanted talks not to diplomatically agree to reforms, but to diplomatically preserve their own power and status. The other problem with talks is that if the U.S. held talks and agreed for the regime to stay in power with U.S. blessing, then the U.S. administration would lose its standing. Right now, the people protesting, undoubtedly with Mossad and CIA encouragement, are literally dying and risking their lives to bring about the downfall of the Ayatollah's rule. They expect the U.S. to refrain from diplomatically supporting that rule. We now have about 4 decades of diplomatic efforts with Iran without any noticeable results except to make the situation worse. So I suppose talking to them, sending them money is pointless. It makes sense to me to stop business and encourage our allies to stop business with a regime that commits such human rights abuses, as long as it's universally applied. That's the problem, isn't it? The concept of isolating human rights abuses is not universally applied. Everyone knows it, including the Iranians. It's hard to stay on the moral high road under such circumstances. Well, Iran, ever the implacable adversary, as usual, is talking tough. Would a sensible leader threaten war with an adversary many times stronger than that leader? And when that leader appears to be a weakened or destroyed armed forces, the Ayatollah is doing just that. But I don't think he's insane. No, he's living out the Islamic book as he perceives it. That book tells him to seek death instead of life, wash the cities of the world in blood and in constant war until the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, comes and makes the world into what the book tells him it should be. Rather than insanity, he really does literally believe the words in the Islamic holy book written almost 1,400 years ago. Western leaders don't understand that because they believe nothing. Religion to a Western leader, whether Christianity or something else, is just a ruse they use to get elected. They really believe nothing. They worship only the God of power to which they are utterly addicted. This man, the Ayatollah, the unbending foe, is different. He will pretend to negotiate for a better deal, but when his gullible adversaries in the West deliver, he will not comply because he believes the words in that book and nothing else matters to him. He warns the U.S. through his foreign minister that he is ready for war if Washington wants to test it. I'm sure he is ready. He apparently doesn't mind how much his people suffer. Why doesn't he get them food, especially some water? I guess it's because he doesn't know how, and besides, the book doesn't tell him to do that. Why won't he make a deal with the great Satan for water technology and resources? Well, the answer to that question is obvious, folks, by the name of his adversary. The foreign minister said if the U.S. wants war like it did before, Iran is ready. But he hopes the U.S. will choose the wise diplomatic option. The other way leads to criminal war, he said, criminal war like the abduction of Nicolas Maduro. He hopes the U.S. will negotiate rather than make war for Israel's interest. That's what the foreign minister of Iran said. There is a man here in the U.S. who has been very vocal in support of the protesters on social media. That man is Reza Pahlavi, the son of former Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who has been living in exile in the U.S. since the ouster from power of the Shah in 1979 in the Islamic Revolution. He has been very active with international media appearances as well as social media. The other day, he met with Trump's chief Middle East negotiator, Steve Witkoff. Some of the demonstrators in Tehran shout in the streets, "Long live the Shah." My guess is that they are too young to remember what life was really like under the Shah. Pahlavi, to my knowledge, has not stated his true intentions with respect to Iran, but he is scheduled to travel to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump, as well as to deliver a speech at the Jerusalem prayer breakfast. Very interesting indeed, because that makes me think of the real reason for all this. Who are the American politicians who favor the interest of a foreign country over that of the American people? Just about all of them, it seems. Last Tuesday, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, said there's no room in his party for those who do not support regime change wars. He said we should all be in on overthrowing the Iranian government, allegedly on Israel's behalf. There are many polls which show the ambassador is dead wrong. No pun intended, folks. Dead wrong about that. Polls show far more Americans support my position of come home and mind your own business rather than the ambassador's position of fighting for greater Israel in the Middle East. Did Trump commit an act of war against Iran when he sent stealth bombers a few weeks ago? The real question is not, was the attack an act of war, but was the attack at the bequest of a foreign leader, and if so, will that same leader request or demand another attack on Iran this time? My conclusion is that yes, he will do it, despite the undeniable fact that the American people are sick of foreign wars that have nothing to do with them but are beneficial only to foreign nations and their leaders. Meanwhile, in Iran, the regime has shut down the internet across the country in an effort to prevent people from organizing meetings and protests. Elon Musk provided his Starlink system, and anyone in Iran could access it without charge. He says there are rumors that the Chinese have provided technology to Iran to disable Starlink. Anytime it is so obvious that an entire people group is not free, it causes anger and outrage here in America. In response, the Iranians have threatened to assassinate President Trump, pledging that, quote, this time we will not miss, end quote. Well, a regime that murders and hangs its own people and which is mired in a water crisis and inflation might want to consider a more low-key approach, especially when that regime's past performance against the U.S. Air Force is considered. Now, for now, the ISW, the Institute for the Study of War, reports to us that protests have been suppressed by security forces but could erupt again at any time. They seem to be slowing down, however. Finally, folks, to close this Castle report, here is an interesting quote from Mr. Paul Craig Roberts. Quote, the United States is a strange place. Americans pledge their allegiance to the United States of America, but their government pledges allegiance to Israel. President Trump parades around as if he is master of the world, but he is not even master of his own country, end quote. At least that's the way I see it, folks. Until next time, this is Darrell Castle. Thanks for listening.